Okay, it is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Irena Sumi, who has written the most remarkable book called Slovenian. If you could mention and if you could show us our book,
Slovenian Righteous
Amongst the Nations.
It's right here.
And it's been translated. It's in Slovenian and it's translated into English as well.
It came out simultaneously in Slovenian and in English. Yeah, and I'm actually a co-editor of the book because there are many authors of the stories. But I did research and write about Tomasz Zajc and his nanny.
And that's the remarkable story. And I had the great privilege of meeting and interviewing. And it is absolutely phenomenal. And she was recognized now amongst one of the Hasidei Mutalam, the righteous.
Actually, it's been exactly a year ago. So we will have to update the book with a new edition. And possibly there will be more people recognized by the Yad Vashem as righteous. No less than 8 more, we expect. But we'll see what happens.
And Irena, can I ask, how has your book been accepted here in Slovenia and worldwide?
Well, we have the exceptional luck of having the collaboration of an exceptional woman. Her name is Miriam Steiner-Aviese. She lives in Israel. She moved to Israel in the 80s. She's Slovenian.
She's Slovenian.
Yes. She's a survivor. And she was very much involved with the project of ex-Yugoslavia and the righteous, because she worked for Yad Vashem for a number of years. And Slovenia was the last from the space of ex-Yugoslavia to come up with a book on the righteous among nations, most of whom were, of course, recognized sort of after independence. Very few were recognized before. There are reasons for that too. Because the old regime didn't like those kind of stories, nothing.
It was suppressed.
It was, yes, everything was suppressed. I think people still, or many people in Slovenia think that the Holocaust never happened in Slovenia. That it happened, but it happened far away. Of course, that is not true. It happened in Slovenia. There was, that we know of for certain, at least 700 victims, and 90% of Slovenian Jews perished in the Holocaust.
That's a very high percentage.
Very
exceptionally high.
Yes. But you see, it has to do with the Nazi plan of so-called Lebensraum, right? They were sort of systematically ethnically cleaning the territories around the German-speaking space, which is Slovenia and Czech Republic and Slovakia and Poland and so forth. So in these places the Holocaust
it actually took
some years.
What was also fascinating reading in your book, the testimonies, is that there were also families where the parents had actually left the Jewish faith, had converted, and they were also taken to the camps. So it didn't really save or help them that much. They were still regarded by the Nazis as having Jewish blood. And
well, Slovenia is traditionally very, very much a Catholic place, right? So during the 30s, people were trying many things, and most of them, I suppose, didn't quite believe that it's going to be as bad as it really was. Some people escaped in the very last moment. Some people tried with conversion. Nobody was saved because they converted.
Yeah.
So.
But I think what also stands out in your remarkable book, I mean, it really is something I would encourage everybody to read. It is a document to just bravery and exceptional courage, and in such adversity, that there were a lot of in the clergy that they actually, here in Slovenia in particular, that they risked their lives and they actually helped a lot of Jews. The clergy were quite involved, which is heartwarming.
Well, in this book, actually there were Slovenian Catholic priests who didn't actually work in Slovenia, but in Italy and Serbia and so forth. But there are more stories, and that's one of the things we sort of asked in the appendix to this book, that people should come forward with more stories, because we've heard more stories. They need to be researched
and documented.
Yeah. And they do involve at least one priest in Ljubljana that I happened to know when I was a child, because his church was just in our neighborhood. So he was very active. He went door to door with various initiatives and actions and so forth. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Father Roman, yeah.
And Eric, just a little bit on your personal side. You were born here in Slovenia?
Yes, I was actually here in Ljubljana, yes.
And your family have a long history here in
Not that long. My mother's family basically originates from northern Italy. And my father had an origin story that went like this. He said, about 200 years ago, we came from Czechia, where we had a circus that was called Deutsch. And he said, we were Czech gypsies. That was his origin story. Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But your family, they escaped the horrors of the
My
of the
father
Shoah?
was a Holocaust survivor.
He was a survivor.
He was in Dachau, yeah. His sisters were in the resistance, right? So, yeah.
And did your father speak about his experiences?
Never ever. And having studied the survivors, the Slovenian Jewish survivors.
Many kept silent.
This is the most common story. Most survivors never speak up, never spoke up, especially not at home.
So when I had the great privilege to really meet Thomas, and I asked him, did your parents ever discuss, both his mother and his father? He said they never spoke a word about it.
Yes, you see, it's this thing. By far the most uncommon experience with the Holocaust was to survive it. And by far the rarest thing in survivors was to speak up.
It's a pity, because it's a history that...
yes, but it's also trauma. Right?
It's a major trauma.
Huge trauma that is intergenerational. We have lots of studies about that too.
Irena, I just want to mention also something in your book which I found really quite remarkable, is that Yugoslavia was the only country really where they would accept Jewish partisans. And that is quite a very important part of Jewish history in a way, because many partisans, people who wanted to help in the resistance in Poland and other countries, they were rejected.
Exactly.
But here in Yugoslavia, they were actually accepted.
Well, the Yugoslav resistance was communist oriented, so they were, at least at that point, quite emancipatory towards Jews. And yes, thousands, almost 6,000 Jews survived because they joined the resistance. Yeah.
That is very important. I think that's part of our history that I think needs to be documented greater and made people should become more aware of.
It is well documented, but perhaps not many sources are available in English, which we're trying to make up for. Sort of.
Well, I think with the publishing of your book and hopefully the republishing, this remarkable story of tremendous courage and heroism will become more known to the general public.
Yes, it's one of the enigmatic sides of this entire Holocaust business. So many people just stood by, and we find it difficult to understand, because people knew very early on what was going on, and most chose not to say or do anything. And then you have these exceptional people. As far as I understand, these are people who had to do what they've done, because if not, they couldn't have lived with themselves.
Yeah.
There's this moral imperative that is really exceptional. Yeah, it's an exceptional thing.
It really is. And just, I'd like to ask, after you wrote the book and after it's been published, have you had any negative incidents or any anti-Semitism or any...
Not because of the book, no, I don't think so, no. But there is a substantial naturalized, normalized anti-Semitism in Slovenia, yes.
There is.
Oh, yes.
But the country on a whole has good relations with Israel, and one can walk freely, one can practice one's Judaism freely here.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. I mean, yes, but Slovenia is a very parochial place, right? And most people probably feel that they don't know any Jews or never met any Jews. Is this kind of anti-Semitism without Jews, as we call it here? And I would say ever since this economic crisis, 2008 and so forth, all sorts of racisms and anti-Semitism is on the rise. But it is all over Europe and United States, and we know that.
Well, I just want to mention, I have 2 copies that I managed to get in Slovenian, which I've given to 2 of my very close philatelic friends, and they've received it incredibly well.
Okay.
And I think I just want to really thank you. There are no words to describe our deep appreciation for your enormous contribution to Jewish history, really, in documenting this. And it must just go from strength to strength, and it is phenomenal. And we are in awe, really. It's a phenomenal. It's just an incredible, important work that you've done, and it's greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you. We're trying to do a little more. We're preparing a book on the history of Slovenian Jewry, which goes quite deep to early medieval times. Basically Slovenia was always on top of the Adriatic Sea. So there was always a traffic point. There was always a crossroads. And even in the first Roman century, you have fragments of Jewish presence in Slovenia. Of course, the strong point was the 15th century in Maribor, which is a town 120 kilometers away from Ljubljana, where there was, and is still standing, the synagogue of Rabbi Esaline ben Petahia, who was a great medieval Talmudist.
Yeah. Wow. So, to end off, I really want to thank you again for your precious time that you've given.
Thank you so much.
And just our blessings, that may you have all of Hashem's blessings, and may you continue from strength to strength and continue in your vital work that you do. It's really important, and I think it's not only for Jews, but it's for the general public, and this awareness that there were people that really stood out, and they risked their lives. They really risked their lives, and they are heroes. And it is so important that their stories are told, yes, and that we can learn, that we learn from our history. And
we should never forget. Yes, you're very right. We shouldn't forget.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Les.